Hey everyone, Phobos here, coming at you with a Path of Exile video. So this is just going to be another little update. No new builds as of yet. I guess this is technically a new build for me, but it's not really a new build in terms of innovating anything because it's been around for quite a few patches and it's already pretty strong. But just going to give you a little heads up on what I'm doing with this character, then I'll probably make another video on my totem character. And then I do have some new stuff coming down the pipeline. But we're just trying to amass some kind of currency and decide exactly what I want to do to display that stuff. So let's get into this guy. And right now this is a Glacial Cascade miner. I should actually put the gems back in. I was actually testing out something with volleyball or volley and fireball. But yeah. So let me just put these back in. I'll go over the links actually while I do that. So Minefield, obviously, area of effect. You can swap this with Conk or like Control Destruction, depending on what you want to do. I had Control Destruction in for a while because the AoE already seems really good. I'll just show you how it looks like with increased AoE. Pretty huge. Then when you put in Control Destruction, still pretty big, not quite as big. And then Conk, it's noticeably smaller, but yeah. So yeah, you can mess around with those, but personally, I think you do so much damage, generally speaking, while mapping that having increased AoE in there is just fine. Glacial Cascade, don't have a 21 yet, but oh man, there's 20. Remote Mine, obviously. Critical Strikes and Trap and Mine support. Now, there are some people that use Fizz to Lightning, and personally, I prefer to use Herm Sorrow before I get the Helm Enchant. So right now I have the Helm Enchant, so it's fully converted, so you can just throw Trap and Mine in there. But before that, people generally like to run Physical Lightning, so they don't have to use Herm Sorrow, so they can get like more HP and stuff. Personally, I just like using Herm Sorrow because when all the damage is lightning, it's easier for things to, like, you do more damage with pen skills, obviously. You can use like Frostbite. You can have stuff like cold damage on your weapon. Like right now I just have spell damage, but you can have like cold damage on things and it doesn't really negatively impact your damage too much, right? Because all of it's cold anyway, pretty much. So yeah, I just like using Herm Sorrow. Until you get the actual Helm Enchant, obviously. Now, there's been new jewels added, and I haven't really tried them out yet, but playing the build, I just can't really see how they're going to be like that much better than having 4-stat jewels, right? Like, so I think intuitively, we knew it was going to be a DPS loss, having the new GC jewels in as opposed to 4-stat jewels, so that's something we knew right off the bat, but what I think people are unsure about is like how good the extra spike is going to be. And given the amount of AoE clear, I just really can't see it being like that insane. Like, I'll probably have to try it at some point, but I haven't really seen anybody else make any huge efforts to incorporate the jewels into their build, right? And it's because, especially with these new jewels that are all pretty good that you're getting from Abyss League, it's like, do you really want to give that up? You know, to have these Glacial Cascade jewels, because if you have a jewel like this, it's actually pretty fucking insane, right? Like, you get life on here, flat life, you get 2% elemental pen if you haven't killed recently, which is all the time, and then you have 28% increased critical strike chance if you haven't dealt a critical strike recently. Now, the best part about this is this build doesn't even get power charges from critting, so it's not, you don't even use like an Orb of Storm setup. So, like, these jewels would be a lot less useful on a totem build, for example, like Freeze Pulse Totem, because you are actually placing in Orb of Storms, looking to kind of get crits to generate your power charges. So, this doesn't really apply a lot of the time, right? But for mines, it's up pretty much all the time, because you get your charges via this node, Blast Cascade. So, yeah, this is just like, these jewels are just like really amazing, especially like this one isn't really finished, right? But if you had like added damage to spells in there or like resist or something, like this would be an insane jewel. So I just can't really see why you'd really want to give that up for Glacial Cascade conversion and getting like one extra spike. I'll probably have to try it practically speaking, but I just can't imagine it being like that good, right? So yeah, those are kind of like the ways you can go about getting conversion. And I obviously just go for the helm, because when you get the helm enchant, then you can use gloves with life on them. And Herm Sorrow is great for leveling, but obviously you want to get as much life as you can. This build actually gets a decent amount of life, as you can see. I don't even have really good life on my shield or anything. Pretty good life on this ring. Pretty good life here. What I was trying to do is I was trying to get some strength on pieces. That's another option you can do, is you can get like strength pieces, or you can get armor pieces and try and get strength on them to boost your life a bit. I have some intellect pieces here, or ES pieces, mainly because I just happened to find boots with the Merc Lab enchant that have the pen on them, and I got these like really cheap. I think these are like 2 chaos or something, and that's pretty insane for these. So I just obviously went full in and tried to get some ES. And I have a decent amount of ES, which sort of helps on the miner a bit. I feel like because just how the playstyle is, you'd end up taking more damage on a miner than a totem build, it feels like. And also with just how the stuff comes out, you take more damage because there's always going to be a delay when you're running through the map fast, right? Because you're either going to be slowing yourself down and you're not going to get as much coverage if you're constantly placing, if you're like doing mine shield charge, right? Mine shield charge, then they're going to be smaller. If you place more mines, you get more area. So it's kind of just going to be situational depending on like how you want to play it through the map, right? But what it ends up in overall, I guess I'm saying, is that you end up basically taking a bit more damage than you would on a totem build. So that means that the ES is not quite as good as on a totem build, because it tends to be down more often than not, I find. I guess on like a boss where you're not really planning on getting hit consistently, it's still good because it'll be up for that big hit. So yeah, it's definitely obviously not worthless having ES, but I just wouldn't count on it as much. You know, like you definitely want to have 4.5 plus K life, ideally over 5K. So there's that. And yeah, in terms of the 6 link, I was just using a tabula for a while, and then I bought this basically and just greeted it because why not? You know, trying to get that extra life roll in. It's basically the same concept with getting the helm enchant. The helm enchant's sort of expensive right now, so you're probably going to be on Tabula Herm Sorrow for a while. And your HP is going to be in like the 4 point something K, but as long as it's like over 4.5, it's pretty safe because you got a big mind over matter buffer here as well. So that's nice. In terms of the mana issues, if you run 2 Vol Clarities, I find that you pretty much never go You don't really have any issues whatsoever. It's basically like the Tarky fix to the problem, right? I think that's what Tarky was running when he did his GC miner into KV miner to level 100 in the past hardcore race or whatever. And I think that's a really good strategy. I messed around with using 1 Vol Clarity, and it was fine, but I think if you do want to put 2 in there, it's just, like, you'll never have issues with 2, right? Like, you definitely don't need to run 2. But if you do run 2, you'll never run into a circumstance where you might worry about being And the good thing about running 2 is you're probably always going to have one up for the boss. So you can pretty much have one up throughout the map at all times. And then, like, let's say you get to the boss room after you've just popped it and you haven't killed enough stuff to get the souls in to refresh the Vol Clarity effect. You're still going to have your other Vol Clarity for the boss, which is really nice because obviously, like, the boss strategy in a lot of cases is basically, like, run in, pop the Clarity, put down the totem, and then just, like, spam your mines, and the totem detonates the mines for you, as long as that's a target. Speaking of the totem, I wanted to get into the totem a bit, and this is why ultimately I kind of just don't really like the build as much for clearing compared to Freeze Pulse in general. Like, it's definitely good for bossing, even though it doesn't quite feel as safe as the totem build does for bossing. And I think it's basically just because of how the totem actually works. It just seems like the targeting can be weird. Like, for example, if you have your totem here, right? It seems like, and the boss is, like, behind here, there are some, like, weird line of sight scenarios where, like, your mines just aren't going off. And because you kind of condition yourself into dropping the totem and then spamming, what happens is you end up just kind of sitting there spamming mines, and it's like you can detonate them manually, but you're kind of almost in like a little loop where you're just like expecting them to go off at any second and they're not going off. So you really have to be vigilant against that. It's not something that's like insanely terrible, right? Because, you know, with good play, good awareness, you just realize your mines are not going off, you detonate them. So it's not the end of the world, but it does take a little bit getting used to. Miner definitely has a bit of that clunky play style. Like after you get the mine passives and stuff like that, and because the AoE of GC is so big, you know, it definitely feels better, but it's just not as smooth as a totem build, I guess you would say, right? So it's not going to have as fast clear, but it obviously demolishes bosses, and it's just really fun to play in general. So definitely a build I recommend. I'd say like leveling with this build is actually insane, because like you're so safe against difficult bosses because you literally just phase them so quickly. And it's pretty decent at just like clearing trash and stuff like that too. Like it's obviously not as fast as somebody running in Quiz and doing totems where they're getting like the 20 attack speed for their shield charge and shit from Instruments of Virtue, but it's still really good. So yeah, definitely something to look into for a league starter, especially if you're just starting now or something like that. You haven't started yet. It's definitely really good. And yeah, you don't need much gear at all, basically. You just want to get that tabula at some point, and it functions just fine on a 4-link before that, so yep. And I think I'm pretty much covered everything. For the Scepter, you're basically just looking for like attack speed. You can obviously use a Bright Beak if you want to go full attack speed. If you want some damage, just get something like this. This wasn't too expensive. Shield, just looking for crit spell damage. Don't need cast speed. Don't need cast speed on this either, which is nice. Makes the gear a lot cheaper than a totem build. And the Amulet, you're just looking for crit multi, basically. You can get spell damage, obviously. You can get some other stuff, but you're mainly looking for crit multi here. Rings, mainly looking for resist. You can obviously get stuff like cold damage, but that's all extra. And the jewels, I would really recommend jewels that have the penetration, and if you can, penetration and the crit effect, where if you haven't crit recently, you get the like close to 30% additional crit. Really nice. Flat damage is also great. All res is great if you need it. So lots of options you can do there. And obviously, I think this is the best enchant. And in terms of boot enchant, so the pen is definitely the best one. However, the pen, the crit, or the flat added to lightning will all work. So like, if the one that you're trying to get, let's say the pen, is very expensive, and you happen to find one of those other ones for cheap, you know, the damage difference isn't going to be like insanely different. You know, just having one of those is really good, basically. So if you can get another one for cheap, go ahead and pick it up. And don't be afraid to look at the Merciless level stuff, because like technically the Uber version is 10%, but 6% is still fucking insane. So you know, a pair of boots like this, if they had the Uber enchant on them, probably like 25-30 chaos. I think these were like 2 chaos, I said. So obviously, you know, if you're doing things on a budget, you can get a lot of value with this build for a small amount of currency. And that's something I really enjoy about it. So keep that in mind. As far as the links, oh yeah, this is the other thing I want to talk about. Another Tarky idea here, I think. Well, I'm sure he wasn't the first one that thought of it, but he mentioned this in his recent video. This setup with the detonate mines on casts when damage taken is like insane, and you should always use it in my opinion. The guide I was mainly following for this was Wins. I think I got a lot of inspiration from his guide, and obviously I like, you know, what he's done with the build. I like a lot of the decisions he's made, but I don't think he had this setup in his build. Maybe he has it now. I'm not really sure, but at the time I looked at the guide, it didn't look like he had that setup. And I just think this is like so invaluable. Probably doesn't have this actually because I think he runs Combs Roots. So he's not really ever getting stunned. But if you're not going to run Combs Roots, you definitely want to have a setup like this. I wanted to be a bit more mobile, so I didn't run Combs Roots and just ran this instead. I think he has like a Frost Bomb in here instead of Detonate Mines. But yeah, I would definitely recommend if you have the capability of being stunned, you want this in your setup. And Yep, that's pretty much it. I got the spell totem with the detonate mines, increased duration, shield charge, fortify faster attacks, summon stone golem. You can use a stone golem or a flame golem, or you can use a lightning golem, I guess, for attack speed. Any of them is really fine, but I just find I like having the stone golem because it doesn't die as often, and sometimes it can actually tank for you. So it's kind of nice. Essence Worm, obviously want that for hatred, so you can reserve no mana. You get the Clear Mind Jewel. Where is it? Yeah, right here. So obviously you want that, and let me look here. I think that's pretty much it. You get the Vol Clarities and the duration with the faster casting in there to make it cast quicker. You can obviously throw in stuff like Vol Lightning Trap and the like, so there's that. I guess we'll go into the tree. So this stuff is pretty self-explanatory. You just get this first, Bomb Specialist, Demolition Specialist. Then you get Explosive Expert. For Uber, you'd get this. This isn't really that great, in my opinion, but it's better than nothing. If you're running Combs Roots, like it says in Wind's Guide, you can't really use this because you have what is it called? I forget what it's fucking called. You have stun immunity, but the stun immunity means you can't evade, I think, or something like that. So it's like you'll yeah, I'm not really, I forget like why, but you basically just can't use this. And oh yeah, because blind enemies that are blinded, it's irrelevant because they're always going to hit you because you have no evasion. That's what the problem is. So this doesn't work. But I think he just takes like this for more movement speed and then this for more mind laying speed and stuff like that. So Uber is not really that important with this build. It's kind of always been that way with Sab. I was hoping they'd fix that maybe this expansion, but they don't seem to like it. So that's that. But yeah, so very simple ascendancy there. And then in terms of the tree, I basically start off with the LE damage nodes, and then I just spec over into these because they're just better overall. They scale with stuff like Promise. And I don't pick up this stuff at the start, but I end up re-going back through the build. And like normally what I'll do is I'll path out here, get the health, go through here, go down to here, come through here, and you want to get Clever Construction first just so your shit can't be killed. Then you just head this way. Normally I actually path down through here, get life, get AoE, get health, get mind over matter. Then you start adding in the crit afterwards. Obviously you want to pick up volatile mines at some point so your shit can't, shit is instant. Blast Cascade's good. You want the Amplify node. You want stuff like Elementalist for the res. I took a Lyra, by the way, just because the res is nice with this build, and the mana. Passive mana regen is really good, and the crit multi doesn't hurt, so. Yeah, and I just basically pick up Jewel Sockets afterwards, pick up Alchemist afterwards. I don't really make it a huge point to get this. I just pick it up when I'm getting with the crit. Going to be picking up Doomcast next, obviously, and you pick up this at some point pretty much when you've gone full elemental conversion. Obviously you want Saboteur here. It's really good. So yeah, pretty common sense build for sure. And the flasks, as you can see, I have all the flasks on here except for one. I stripped it off. This is a Seething Divine Life Flask of Staunching. You can do a bunch of different things with the flask, to be honest. Like, technically, Adziri's Promise and Taste of Hate is the most damage. You could run those and drop out. You can run No Health Flask, run those two, and then drop, like, a Basalt or a Granite. Or you can drop the Movement Speed Flask. Or you can drop, like, if you want to keep a Health Flask, you can keep a Health Flask and drop a Movement Speed and, like, a Basalt for those two. But, yeah, I don't have really a Taste of Hate yet on this guy. And, I have an Adziri's Promise, but I pretty much only swap it in for bosses. Because you don't really need it for anything else. But it does, like, insane boss damage, so. definitely a good thing to use for bosses. For bosses, I'll normally swap it in my Quicksilver slot. So, yep, that's pretty much the whole build. I'm going to be doing another one of these on Freeze Pulse. And if you guys want a demo video, I'll post a demo video. I have no problem doing that. It's just I figured you guys have probably seen enough Glacial Cascade mines, so I was basically just doing a video showing, you know, my little interpretation of it and how I play it. And I'm going to be showing you the new version of the Freeze Pulse Totem build I have, which I've been using to farm currency. And then I have some interesting build ideas down the pipeline, so stay tuned for that. And thanks for watching.